Welcome to the Doo Divas Smells Like Money podcast. I'm your host, Suzan Chin Taylor, CEO and founder of Creative Raven, the firm that helps wastewater industry contractors and manufacturers unlock the power of digital marketing, AI, and PR to boost sales and opportunities. Whether it's through our online marketing and lead generation programs or providing a fully outsourced marketing department, we are passionate about helping businesses in the wastewater and civil infrastructure sectors not just survive, but thrive in today's digital world. Each episode, I'll be bringing you expert tips and strategies to help you grow and succeed. Let's dive in. Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to this week's episode of the Doo Divas Smells Like Money podcast. We are rounding up what has been a really thought-provoking series with Karen Valencic of Spiral, get me that word again?
Spiral
Impact. Thank you. And she's the author of the book by the same name. And so we're going to be rounding out our series. We've been talking about, just human skills and leadership and things that we may not have thought about. And so this last episode, we're going to focus on the importance of all these things we've been discussing, but how it relates to human skills in an extremely technical world, which we all live in this industry, is that, she's done a lot of work. She has an engineering background, for those of you who have not tuned into our prior episodes, which makes this very interesting. And she's also a black belt martial artist. So interesting combinations of skills, but has done a lot of work in highly technical industries. And one of them, she said she did a lot of work with hospitals. And so I was wondering, well, wait a minute, how does that correlate to what we do? And the first thing I'm thinking of is, well, we are in industries that have an impact on public health, water, wastewater treatment, clean water, water supply, but also, contractors and people that do work in this field, it can be highly dangerous. Yeah. And it's so important that certain protocols, just like in a hospital or medical setting, be followed, because someone could get hurt, sick, and somebody could actually die if certain safety procedures and protocols are not followed. And so there's some real questions that come up and communication challenges that come up in leadership that we discussed, that the real challenges in this area are the human skills, not necessarily the technical skills. I've had many contractors that say, I can teach skill, but I can't teach attitude. I can't teach ethic, And so they're sometimes often the hardest to hone in for leadership. But as it relates to this, is that what do you feel that, in your experience, that technical industries like ours can learn from healthcare about communication, protocols, and precision?
Yeah, well, I think, I was gathering my thoughts about this, and I think there's kind of three buckets I think about this, which is the people aspect of it,
Right.
the culture aspect of it, and then the process aspect of it. And what I know about people and I think as a leader, knowing this, people will take shortcuts, and it's inherent to their nature. I was over at Butler University's college campus, and they've got some new areas, and they've got these beautiful sidewalks, but yet people walk diagonally across the lawn, you know? And I have found that actually in healthcare too. It's like you have a process, and people will do that process, and then they'll inherently see ways they can shortcut it. And that's where you can get into some real trouble.
Right.
And so I think recognizing the fact that the people by nature will seek shortcuts unless they really understand it. But the other aspect is, and we've talked about, is the importance of why, somebody knowing why they're doing something. And I think that's important when you're teaching somebody a process, that that you tell them why, but actually, before you tell them why, and this goes back to our earlier conversations, I would ask them, why do you think we might do it that way? So again, it gets their brain engaged. So they're thinking about it. Why would we do it that way? And so you're engaging their mind about it and then setting up that process. But then the other aspect of that I have found that I really love to do, particularly if I'm teaching a class, and I have taught my conflict class in university settings, and one of the thing I do for my final is I tell the students that their final is that they have got to reteach the course to their peers. So in our final, we get together, we have pizza, we have a party, but they have to reteach the course. And what's really beautiful about that is they're looking at it differently because they've got to teach it. And I think the same thing when you're training people to do a technical skill, it's asking them why as they're training it. And maybe they'll know, maybe they won't, but they're at least thinking about it. And then ask them to reteach whatever they're doing to somebody else and observe them. Because that's what you really learn in terms of what they're actually grasping in order to do this. And I have seen it many
Excellent
times.
idea. That's
Yeah,
an
I've seen
excellent
it.
idea. Yeah.
Yeah, and I've seen it many times where it's like, somebody starts doing something and they tweak it a little bit. And then another person comes along and then they tweak it a little bit. And then of course, you might even have a diagram or instructions right there of what's supposed to happen, but people will still shortcut that. So I think there's always that, going in and even auditing after time, because again, there's that creep that we have as human beings to take the path of least resistance. And so I think those are really important things to think about. The other thing about people, I have found it to be very valuable for people to swap departments or spend time in another department that they serve or serves them so that they can actually really understand what's going on. When in the last section, I think I talked about when I was working with in a hospital OR area, the sterile processing in the OR. What was really beautiful about that, it turned out to be a 9-month engagement, but they ended up witnessing and experiencing what each other experienced. And so they were able to help problem solve to make things better because they understood where the places where things could mess up be on the other side. And so really allowing those people to change, not necessarily change roles because they may not be qualified, but to spend time there really learning what the other department is doing. And that even works well when you've got a sales department and an operations department, because a lot of times salespeople will not really truly understand what's going on with operations, and there's always that conflict with that.
Mhm.
So those are things I think are really important from a people perspective, is making sure to be asking why, not just telling why, and then have them reteach what they're learning so they can really get it. And you can see how effective your teaching is. And then exchanging roles, I think, are really important with people. But
I
I but
like
I
that.
also
Yeah, I like that idea of the exchanging roles because there's that old I don't know which tribe it is, but Native Americans saying that, do not judge until you have walked a mile in someone else's moccasins. Something to that effect. Like you were making that point that they may not be qualified to switch positions, but to
yeah.
actually, spend time seeing what someone is facing and responsible for and what they have to do on a daily basis, I think that opens up the door for empathy for somebody
Oh.
else's
Hmm.
struggles and challenges. And especially if you're responsible for giving them something that they
Yeah,
need to do for you to see firsthand what your contribution actually means to them and
yeah,
its
exactly.
its importance in the whole, the whole system at large, so that we're not, in that tunnel vision of only what we're responsible for and why that matters.
Right, right. I think that's just so keenly important. So, and it's interesting. I was just visiting my father. He turned 94 last week, and he has macular degeneration. And
Oh,
on the way home, I live about 10 hours away. I was listening to a podcast, and there was a Harvard researcher that was sharing some work they're doing with genetics. With actually, it wasn't with genetics, it was with DNA, the coding around DNA.
right.
They're getting ready to do a test um, with people that are blind. And he was sharing that he said, to help people understand what it's like to be old is, he actually put on the podcaster, he put on a weighted jacket that made it so he couldn't move his neck. And he had all this weight. And then he says, I take that a step further and I put Vaseline on people's eyes and put earplugs in their ears so they can understand what it's really like to be old and have some of these issues that people have. And that's exactly my dad. He can't see very well and he can't hear very well and he can't move very well. And for me, it's just I just recognize I look at the world differently because I know what he struggles with. And so it's interesting just how even doctors' offices are designed in a way, his eye doctor's office, it's like it's so bizarrely designed for someone that can't see. So
Wow.
anyway, it might be going off topic a little bit there, but I
No,
do
that's
think
okay.
that, yeah, getting in somebody else's, I just had an owl fly by. That was weird.
Wow, for you to actually see an owl in the middle of the, well, getting towards evening where you're at, but that's really interesting. It's just, I think it is that empathy, which kind of gives a segue into, we're all looking at AI now, and
Right.
it's infiltrating all of our lives. And in some
Yes.
ways, it's very good and it's very, very helpful. But like any tool, there's a double-edged sword. There's always that duality to it. And that,
Mhm.
when I think about this, with AI on the rise, what do you see is going to becoming more or become more valuable about being human
Oh,
in
I think it's going to be
leadership and
more.
how we interact? And it comes to, we think about, why can't certain human roles in the industries that we work in, why can't they, or why shouldn't they be replaced by technology? I think that's the key word. Why shouldn't they?
Well, I think it's important to realize that, I mean, I use AI every day, but
So do I.
yeah, and so, but I recognize that as AI advances, it becomes even more important to be a really great communicator. And
Mm,
it's very easy. And this is something I wrote about years ago with Google, but even more so with AI. I've heard I've heard leaders, managers, directors say, "Gosh, I'm so glad that we've got AI so they can just ask AI and they don't have to bother me." That's a slippery
ah,
slope. And I'll tell you why, because the innovation comes from interaction. It's not going to come from AI because AI is all old stuff. But the innovation is going to come from two or more human beings having these non-planned conversations. And I'll tell you, when I was an engineer, I I worked in the auto industry and product development. And when I first began, we were in like a what they used to call a bullpen. Now, the bullpens we had weren't more than 8 to 10 people, and there were no walls, and we each had a desk, and we had just regular phones on the desk that you'd pick up and talk into. So it was a long, long time ago. But that design really created a lot of innovation because what would happen is somebody would overhear something, and then we would have these spontaneous conversations that would really morph into some beautiful things. Well, and then as time went on, they morphed into, well, we need to be more efficient, so let's put up cubicles. And cubicles were awful because you could still hear people talking, but you weren't supposed to. So it really created this weird boundary. But when you stop that, I think casual interaction between people, you miss a lot. And the other thing is, and actually I set my dad up because he used to call me every day and say, "Would you ask AI this or that?" And I always, of course, did, and it was good. But he had a friend that had a tool on his iPhone, and I put it on my dad's phone. It's Gemini, and he can talk into that very easily and get a talking answer back. And I realized that the sad part about that is I may not know what's on his mind because he now doesn't have to ask me, he asks AI. And so I caution people to not just, you know, unload everything onto AI because it's the human interaction that's so important. And I heard a woman on a podcast, and I'm sorry to say I can't remember what her name was, but she said as AI moves along, you know, you'll see a lot of white collar workers that'll be more and more contract. And in that case, it's even more important that you have communication skills where you can adapt and adjust to changing environments because those cultures will be different. So
Right.
I think that the human skill becomes even more important. AI is great for tasks, for organizing data, for all that stuff, but it's not great. I don't think at this point it can organize data to help innovation, but the innovation is still going to come from human beings, and I believe that to be true.
And I
So
also, when you think about the work that we do, especially I'm thinking for contractors, is that if you are a business owner and you have a certain standard that you want your employees to operate or operate by, or this is the way that we always do this. And again, getting back to this is why we do it this way, because these are the
right,
outcomes. And because if you do it this way, then we may have a problem that you won't see today, but it's going to come back to bite us in the you know
yeah,
what tomorrow. And as the owner, it's not your wallet that's going to have to deal with that. It's mine. And so this is
right.
why I want you to do things. So getting back to AI is that do you really want AI giving that staff member instruction on how to do something because it may not be the same protocol or how you want it done or you expect it, or I should even say what your clients expect to receive from you when getting your service or receiving your product,
Yeah,
whatever that is that, yeah, I agree with you. We can rely on this, but it's not going to replace that human element of the emotion and really communicating what's, like you were saying about your dad,
yeah.
what's on our hearts and our minds.
Right, right, right. And so I think always wanting to encourage conversation and dialogue and questions. It's like there's never a question that is stupid. It's just always about if someone doesn't get something, it's because I got, as a person that teaches and coaches, I kind of put the onus on me. If somebody doesn't get something, it's on me because somehow I've missed something there and didn't score it. And that's what I loved about having those students reteach the course because I could see what they got.
that
And
that really ensures that they're walking out and they really have good, clear understanding. And as you're watching that gives you as the trainer an opportunity to go back in and correct and say, all right, not in a bad way, but just say, you know what? You're about 85% of the way there. But
right,
here's the thing that you may have misinterpreted. And
exactly.
here's what it really was. Or you missed this one critical thing. Make sure to remember, it's all about how we communicate. And I think it is getting back to that why. And,
Right.
and getting back to thinking about AI and knowledge is that there's a huge difference between that hands-on, what I would call that hands-on, real world living it expertise and
Yeah.
just being able to spit out expert
Yeah.
knowledge that it's picking up from Wikipedia or wherever
Right.
it's picking up from. Huge
Right.
difference. As a closing thought on this, because we've talked about a lot of, just great things on here. If there, as a communications person that's really coaching people from a variety of industries, if there was one thing about how leaders are communicating today that
Oh,
they should really hone in on to improve and focus on that would make the biggest impact for their organization, what would you recommend that be?
I would recommend it to learn to be the person that asks good, open-ended questions and that you really seek understanding from all of your people. And that requires being intentional about it. It requires being centered as I talked before, and it's really about creating that connection. It's not, it's a little contrary to how I think our culture is, which is, get things done fast, but
Right.
developing that skill to really ask good questions and to be very, very intentional about understanding. Because, in my book, I say, it's interesting how I heard someone say that somebody's a bully. And
Ooh.
and so, okay, so you hear that
Mhm.
and okay, you can walk away and think, oh, that person's a bully. Or you can say, tell me more about that. And how do you experience that person as a bully? And actually, I've actually had that conversation, and the response is, well, they're so demanding. Well, that's not a bully. And and well, now how, tell me a little more about how they're demanding. So see, I'm learning something that's very different than what I first heard. And so I think for a leader is to really get very, very good at that, asking questions and really seeking clear understanding and be willing to ask for those clarity questions. I think because nothing is ever as it seems on the surface, it seems
Oh,
to
so
me.
true.
I mean, I've learned that. And the other thing, I wanted to share something that I thought would be really relevant to your audience, and same thing about safety. And this is kind of I think a really incredible model for leadership too. I read a story, Alcoa is an amazing company.
Right.
They make aluminum products and back in 1987 they were having a leadership change and they were having a lot of production problems. And
Hmm.
in a bit, their business reminds me a bit of your listeners' business. It's a very dangerous environment they had, and they had a lot of workplace accidents. And they hired this new CEO and everybody gathered, all the people that was always a big event. And they always expected all kinds of things about money and
Right.
investments and this and that and the other thing. Well, the man they hired's name was Paul O'Neill. And Paul was a government bureaucrat.
Hmm.
Came in,
Interesting choice.
yeah, yeah, and he came in and he was very distinguished and he said very little. The only thing he said of relevance was, we are going to focus on one thing and one thing only, safety. And everybody left that meeting feeling so disappointed and scared. And actually, several, this, as it's written, as I've read it, is that a lot of people advise people to sell that stock because it was like, this guy is not going to be a good leader. But actually, what happened, and we talked in the last segment about how important intention is. He
Mm.
set a cultural intention of safety. And when they did that, everybody started looking at things very differently. They looked at it with a safety lens and they just made tons of improvements. And I think that I read about that story in a book called The Power of Habit by Charles Duhigg, which is a fantastic book around life and work habits that we have. And that created a habit for looking for safety. And it improved it improved not only their safety record, but their return on investment and their profit, and their whole culture changed because they had this singular focus on safety. And it lifted everybody up. And I thought that was such an interesting thing about how culture can help safety as well. So,
Right. I'm glad that you shared that because I think, when you're working in a highly volatile environment, if you feel that your employer cares about your well-being, that everybody goes home safe tonight,
right,
you're going to feel better. You're
right,
going to want to do better.
right.
And that, at the end of the day, that isn't going to impact the bottom line. You're going to feel better. You're going to feel safer. You're going to feel happier. And when you're happier, you're more productive. If you're more productive, you get more
Yeah,
done in a day. And if you're a contractor, the more you get done in a day, the more
yeah,
profit you're going to make on a job. It's just like it's anything
yeah,
that
yeah,
when people feel safe and secure,
yeah.
they're going to be loyal because they
Right.
feel like
They
my
care about me.
employer has my back.
Yeah,
He
yeah,
worries about me, which means he worries about my family because he wants to make sure that I get home safe every night to those that I love, that I'm not just a decimal point on a spreadsheet, or how much does what I do today impact how good we looked on Wall Street and the share price. And so,
exactly.
that everybody probably thought that was very silly that we're going to focus on safety, but look what it did.
Yeah,
The
it was huge.
safety wound up over
Yeah,
time,
yeah,
positively, incredibly impacting every facet of the business.
yeah, yeah. It's fantastic, and I think it also gave people the opportunity to voice things they felt could be changed that would reflect on safety and be heard as well. So,
It's
yeah,
just one thing.
yeah,
I like that. So, listeners, I think the play to take away from that is, if you're seeing something, is set that intention.
yeah,
And sometimes, one singular intention, just like that example there, can really shift the dynamics in a company in an unbelievably positive way.
oh
So
yeah,
that's my
yeah,
takeaway from it, is that, where do you want to go today?
yeah,
How do you want to be remembered as a leader?
yeah. And I tell you that I don't know who was it. Somebody famous said this, but people don't remember what you did. They remember how you made them feel.
Maya Angelou, the great
Yeah,
poet laureate Maya Angelou, she said,
yeah,
"Yeah, people won't remember what you did, but they will remember how you made them feel."
yeah. And I just think that I think we're in a time where that's really important for leaders to know. And because employees, we all, we all want to be valued. So, yeah,
Yes, isn't that the truth?
yeah,
So again, I want to thank you for spending all the time that you have on these episodes with us. This has been absolutely delightful. And for those of you who have been listening to the series, or maybe just catching it today, I invite you, check out what Karen has to offer on her website, which is spiralimpact.com. Get her book on Amazon and other fine book selling sites, and she's showing it here on the screen today. And check out what she has to offer. And, perhaps if your organization, wants to take it to the next level, or let's say you are experiencing some problems with conflict, or you're losing good people and you just don't understand why, she can help you with it. Might just be a small change in how you communicate and your mindset that can make all the difference. And so, again, thank you, Karen, for being with us on this series. It's been fantastic. And thank you,
yeah.
listeners, for tuning in. And until next time, keep
Been
it
a
flowing.
pleasure. Keep it flowing. Yep.
Thanks for tuning in to today's episode. If you're ready to take your marketing to the next level and start increasing sales and opportunities for your business, reach out to us at Creative Raven. We're here to help you thrive in the digital landscape. Visit creativeraven.com or click the link in the show notes below to schedule a call and learn how we can support your growth. If you enjoyed the insights on today's episode, be sure to hit subscribe so you'll never miss an update. Until next time, keep growing and keep it flowing.